I would like to introduce our next speaker. Jenelle is going to be telling us a little bit about story, and I think this is actually a really good time for this presentation because there's going to be there's so much related to some of the other presentations that we've heard about with regard to kind of like taking your inspiration and kind of this iterative process of creating a story and then nurturing it into something awesome, which not only applies to stories, but to games and to your art and to your music and everything along the way. So please, everybody, a digital round of applause for Jenelle.
Ready, set, we want bubble tea. Okay. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be here in this virtual space together. My name is Jenelle. I also go by JellyMakes on Twitter and Instagram, and just like social media, I like stories. Today, we're going to be talking about building stories from start to finish. I will be walking you through 4 basic stages of building a story, giving tips and encouragement along the way. These 4 stages are inspiration, scope, development, and execution. Let's begin, shall we? So, you have a story you want to tell. Oh, you don't have one yet? Well, that's okay, because we're going to start talking about finding your inspiration. First, there's 2 general types of inspiration, passive and active. Passive inspiration, essentially, is all of your lived experiences, everything you've ever watched, read, or done. Everything influences us to a certain degree, and by exposing ourselves to all of these experiences, we discover what we like and don't like as individuals. I think this is why it's important as a creative person to have hobbies and interests outside of your main passion. The more experiences you have, the more you're able to pull from when you need to generate ideas. Active inspiration is the act of seeking that inspiration out, purposefully reading and exposing yourself to new ideas or trying to generate new ideas on your own. This could be researching topics you don't know much about, brainstorming to link ideas together, creating playlists to set a mood, whatever it is that helps you think. When it comes to trying to generate ideas, a good place to start is to ask yourself, what do you like? Are there genres you lean towards, character types that you prefer, a setting that you'd love to see used? Maybe you really love science fiction and magical girls, and you want to create a story about genetically engineered heroes. Wait, is that just Tokyo Mew Mew? Forget I said that. The point is, you should know what you like, because if you're committing to creating a story, you need to love it at least a little bit. You should be excited to work on it. Don't limit yourself either. Anything can be an inspiration. Don't think you have to fit into an existing pattern. Be you and do your own thing, which includes working in a way that suits you. Do you tend to come up with ideas that are characters first or the story? Maybe it's the other way around. Do you think in words or images? Do you want to work by yourself, or are you working with a team of people? It's important to recognize how you like to work, because everyone has their own way of doing things. There's general rules and guidelines, tips and tricks, but beyond that, it's up to you. If you're not sure how you like to work, just experiment to see what works best. If this is your first project, don't worry too much about perfecting the process. Just finish. The goal really at this point is just to finish. So, back to that original question. What inspires you? For me, I like to use a mixture of writing lists, collecting images through Pinterest, as well as making playlists. Which one comes first varies from project to project, but these are my trusty tools that have never failed me. For stories and narratives, I tend to start in just an outline and flesh it out as I go, writing in asides and scribbling things out if necessary. When I'm writing lists, I tend to jot down whatever comes to mind. I'll write big lists of everything I can think of that I like, whether it's stuff I like to draw, themes I like in books, various aesthetics, onto the list it goes. I also like to keep a lot of lists on my phone if I get an idea while I'm out or at work and need to quickly write it down. It doesn't matter where you write it down, what matters is that you did write it somewhere. As for Pinterest, Pinterest is great. Pinterest is also like Wikipedia. It's a great place to start, but you shouldn't cite it at the very end. It's a useful service to quickly make mood boards and find similar images, and it can be a really great tool to develop the overall vibe of the story. It's a quick and low effort way to feel like you're really nailing down the story. They have also introduced more ways to organize the boards you create, which makes creating multiple boards for a single story much easier. I have some general inspiration boards that mostly contain objects or textures or colors that I find interesting. I like abstract stuff because I feel like it sparks creativity while not being too specific. I also have boards for different projects I'm working on, ranging from a specific character to the overall story. Lastly, but far from least, are playlists. Spotify is great for this, and so was Google Music before they killed it and turned it into YouTube Music. But that's for another day. You can create single playlists on Spotify, or you can create files. I have a single playlist made for a short comic that I'm working on, currently codenamed Rain Project, as well as a file folder full of playlists for a longer series that I'm working on called Slice of Life. If you're feeling a bit extra, you can even use custom art for the playlist cover image. The inspiration phase is all about letting yourself ask what if and following bunny trails. Don't limit yourself or edit yourself too much. It's supposed to be fun. Write stuff down and edit it later. There's plenty of room later to refine, so dream big for now. Because the next thing we have to talk about is the scope. When I first started writing stories, I never even considered the scope. I just wanted the stories to exist. Now that I have a few stories and short projects that I've done, I think it's really important to start on that scope pretty close to the start. Knowing what the story is for is just as important as knowing what the story is. It's important to know how large the project is going to be. For games, you will be planning how many cutscenes will be needed or how many acts the story will have. For comics, you would need to know how many pages and the chapters overall. The breakdown of your requirements will vary depending on the type of project you're working on. Regardless, if you don't plan your scope and what it requires early on, it could mean doom for your project later on. You could enter a development hell cycle where you just keep cycling between developing and inspiration forever and ever. Or the project is simply too big to continue with your current resources. Sometimes you may even have a set deadline. It's important to understand what you're capable of within that time frame. Don't overcommit yourself and be unable to follow through on what you promised. Know your schedule and your abilities and execute your project within them. Being told you need to contain your story and limit it sure isn't fun, but it is necessary. Right now, your story only exists in your head. It's like the ocean. It's big, it's vast, and it seems perfect, and it's limitless. Once you try to contain it, you have to start answering a lot more questions, and you may even start to notice more problems, and maybe your container isn't big enough for what you originally wanted. This is all okay. It can be challenging, but it's important to remember that even though it's tough to narrow down your story's focus, the core of the story isn't changing. Another way of thinking of it is like you're packing for a trip. You only have a limited amount of luggage, so you have to plan out what clothes you need the most. The more trips you go on, the better you get at knowing what you should pack, as well as how to pack more efficiently, bringing more clothes with you. So no matter what happens, do your best to finish your project. You will learn so much more by finishing it than never making it. So let's get started making. This stage is the development stage. At this point, the story may alternate between these first few stages as you hit different bumps in planning. But no worries, you've got this. The development stage is like a more refined version of the inspiration stage. During the inspiration stage, you're gathering information and asking yourself, what if this thing happens? Development is taking all of those previous ideas, sorting through them, and using their best versions. At this point, you'll probably start working on bits of the actual project, even if they're just in a rough form. Just like with the scope stage, this will depend on what sort of project you are telling your story with. Once you enter this stage, your story will start to take shape. You and your team will be hard at work coding those codes, scoring the score, and arting all of those arts. Even if you're not working with a team, it's really good to have a friend or two as a beta or a sounding board for different ideas. This friend is priceless. At this point, you are almost at the end, which brings us to the execution of the project. I know, my skeleton friend, I don't want it to be over either. Working on the project has been great. You don't want it to end, but it must. Whatever container you have chosen to distribute your story in is nearly done. You just have to finish. It's tough. It really is, but you can do it. Sometimes things get in the way and you have setbacks, but your determination will get you through. I hear you. I really do. It's hard to let go of how you imagined your story turning out, but no matter what, you should try your best to finish. Even if it's not exactly what you thought it would be, the satisfaction of finishing it, coupled with all that you have learned, makes it all worth it in the end. Your hard work has paid off. You are able to share your story with friends, and they love it. They're sharing it with their friends too. Congratulations! You have done it. We are all very proud of you. Before you go, let me give you just a little bit more advice. Don't forget to try new things, take chances, make mistakes, get messy. Perfection is overrated. Don't forget to plan time for rest. It is necessary. Listen to other people, especially people with different points of view than you. Make something you want to read, play, or watch. And always revisit old ideas. You never know what gems are lurking. And the most important thing, never, ever, ever, ever forget the number one rule of the internet. Don't read the comments section. If you'd still like some more help, I would recommend reading these books. They'll help you understand plot and narrative structures better. What's that you're thinking? You think your idea might be too dumb? I understand. We have all been there, but let me remind you. There's already an entire series dedicated to a crossover fanfic between Disney and Square Enix. It has a large fan base, including myself, and it shows no signs of ever getting a simpler plot. And let's not forget that Kojima made a game about his love of hiking, Mads Mikkelsen, and monsters, with his best friends Guillermo del Toro and Norman Reedus. If they're allowed to have self-indulgent projects, why can't you? At the very least, you'll make something that you love. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. I hope it has helped give you some insight into making a story. Stay safe and keep creating. Bye!
Right, awesome. Thank you so much. What a good and concise way to talk about some of these topics, because I think your analogy of the container and making sure that your ideas are they don't get too big for the container, or you need to make the container larger, or you need to start small and practice your tools. I think it's also important, because I think that's at least personally where I kind of drop off, is actually sitting down, fleshing a couple things out, and getting discouraged that sometimes things don't work out. But of course, it's always fine. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And again, I think it's really cool to hear this perspective as applied to story, which is something I think I kind of brought this up in the goofiest way during our last stream, where we streamed all the Finish Your Game Jam games. But the idea of kind of having, like, assembling a concept that you're able to walk all the way through that isn't necessarily super gameplay focused is something that I think a lot of people in the community maybe need practice on with as they apply that to their game jam games. Kind of an interesting topic. We were talking about the idea of, like, making sure that characters and or stories can persist over different games, and trying that out sometime, and seeing how that can be focused. I think when we're so game mechanics focused, unless we're using a tool that's more supportive of story or anything like that, like Twine or something like that, then I think a lot of people kind of lose sight of that story. So I think this is a really, really helpful kind of, yes, as Red Slash is saying in here, it's really hard to come up with a story during a jam, and covering it up with game mechanics. Okay, perfect. We're on the same page, it sounds like. Yeah, short story jam, that'd be interesting. Taking an existing short story, making a game out of it. Yeah. Oh yes, thank you for the extra clapping at the end. Cool. Well, anyways, yeah, thank you so much.